and draw as accurately as possible, and I'm not doing it good, I'm just showing you, along the edge of that tape that represented my panel line. And I would do that, and I'm just going to do this quickly. So then what I could do, untape this, take this piece of metal, put it on this side, flip it over. Now I've got those lines, once I tape this back in place, in the exact same place. So I could go back, and what I'd do is take a X-Acto knife and just go along and scribe that line, and then I had the exact same line on the back side as I had on the front side. So that took me this is my 4th panel, it took me till my 3rd panel to figure out that was probably the best way to do that. So I'm learning as I go, so hopefully I can save somebody else learning and making mistakes, and believe me, there's more than my fair share, but if you know me, I can figure out how to mess things up pretty bad. So once I got those lines, I determined where my longitudinal lines from front to back went, and those are luckily straight, and I use a straight edge and a metal scribe and simply scribe those in lightly. Now you don't want to push too hard because it will actually, you'll see it on the front side. So you want to do that lightly. So now I've got all my lines scribed in. I decided that on this project that rivet spacing of 1/8 of an inch was most appropriate. It looked good. I didn't count rivets. I'm not going to get that far. I'm crazy, but I'm not insane. So then what I do is just lay the ruler down and make me a little cross on those lines, and it takes a while, and you'll end up with a piece of metal with all your hash line. You have to do every line on there. Here's one I had started earlier, another one of my wonderful mistakes. I could spend hours showing you my mistakes and only a few minutes showing you the things that turned out good. But this is one I started marking off, punching, and then I realized after this, wait a minute, this is some of the metal here that has the coating on it, which has to be sanded before I punch it. So then I thought, well, let me try to sand it, and I don't know if you can see that, right in here I've sanded the coating off.
There we go.
I've sanded that coating off, but if you look real close up here, you also see I sanded the tops out of the rivets. It looks like a row of volcanoes along there with holes in the top. So I tried as careful as I could just go along without even touching them, and still what little I did, that metal's so thin from the punching process that it didn't take nothing to go right through it. So forget taking this off after the rivets are in it. I did some research, and they say other than sanding Drano, there's a couple different chemicals, things that might work to take this off. So I'll try that later, but at this point I just want to get this one on here. When I've run out of the metal that I've got that has no coating on it, this is about the last major piece. So once I do the wings, I'm going to have to figure out a good way, because that's a lot of sanding to get that off there. But so anyway, so you can see where I punched along there, and I made a few marks on this other panel. Matter of fact, I'm just going to use this one, and I'll show you what I did. And I took a very fine punch. That was actually a pin punch with a flat tip on it, like this, except it was smaller diameter. But the other thing is, it was broke. A small punch like this, they break fairly easy. Working on bomb sites, there's some very small pins in there, and it just didn't withstand me pounding on it. So I ground the tip of it and played with it a little bit, and I found a couple different things. You get different effects depending on what your backing is. Some of the rivets I did that I wanted to appear a little bit bigger, I used just a stack of old computer paper as the backing for pounding the rivets. But I think I like using the press board better. They seem to be more defined when using a harder backing, whereas this softens it, and I think the rivets appear a little bit bigger, but I don't know if we can tell the difference. I did have to go to the I waited outside the tree where all the Keebler elves work, and one of them had his toolbox, and I mugged him and got his hammer. So you need a really small hammer, because I, again, was using a spring-loaded center punch previously just to be consistent. But I found with this lightweight hammer, number one, I needed it to do those really midget little rivets that I was doing, but it also works out good for tapping these simulated rivets in here. Let me see if I can, I can see my mark. So what I do is just go in here, once I got my panel marked out, center it, push it down, make sure it's centered, because it will slip. And I do that one, I don't know what the deal is with the first little tap. It's like to get it set so it doesn't slide on me. But you can see, and I didn't really follow my spacing, I just went to see how it's done. But you can see how the rivets turn out. Now it ends up being, if you look at it, it's almost like a perforation. The material takes an angle. So what I've also found is I come back after that, and you can kind of re-flatten your material. If you don't, it'll look like a diamond where there's a facet, there's a facet. This is when it's like, you know, that's doesn't really look right. But that's all there is to it. You want to make sure that you've got your punch in the right place, because once you punch it, it's pretty well there. I found a couple little tricks. I'm going to make a mark and show you this rivet, and I'm going to, let's see, I probably could have used one of the other ones. There's that rivet. So let me see, I got that rivet off to the side. I shouldn't have done that. So one little trick I found, and it's not real good, but it's the only thing I found if you really make a mistake, that you can go in there, I can take that rivet, I'm going to put this flat punch, and I'm going to hold this as square as I can to that perpendicular to that piece of heavy aluminum under it, and I can knock it back down. Now you see a little dimple, but when you come back, it looks better than it did. Put it that way, wrong punch. If I need to move it back over and get it in line, right, you can really hardly see it, and it blends in with all the other rivets and details. You have to really, really look to see where that rivet was off. You don't want to have to do that any more than you have to, but at least you can do it. So that's pretty much working with the worth of metal. I'm going to try to put together some other videos that accompany this and maybe help somebody that decides they want to try this. Yeah, that too. So anyway, that's my point in paying back for all the people that I've learned from on RCU, and don't be afraid to try anything. Take what you got and just try it. You know, try it on some scrap. The worst you can do is just make a mess.
Amen to that.
Thank you for your support, Ron. All right, that's it.